So many times the topic comes up of sharing all the power, sharing all the information. Another topic came up with an apprentice this week of whether or not there were different lineages that would come together in the higher, the section heads, as you know, heads of groups, heads of lineages, heads of education systems, and so on, philosophies. They come together to bring together their strength and attributes to work to better towards the people. No, and the second one, and the reason is because of perceptions and in power. On the first one, why don't we share everything, is because of the perceptions and the power. And it's, as an example, I've saying so many times, it'd be like handing out guns at a daycare center. You know, we think everybody should be efficient in firearms for self-defense. Well, that's great. At what age do we start teaching that? And not just the age of it. We give age limits to things because of the emotional and mental, psychological maturity to process information and make a responsible decision. Not just following instant gratification desires or somebody else's misinformation that feeds fantasies and so on. You need somebody who can really step outside and give critical thinking and complete thought. So we keep these things hidden, basically, until we have these classical markers when people tell us things or they explain something the way they see it. And it's like, now you get it. Now you get it. Because so many times, and I know this from a teacher's perspective, I know it from a student's perspective, we will say we understand something, and at that time, we could very well be speaking the truth upon the information and experiences that we have to refer upon to assimilate that information, to say, yes, I get your point. I understand what you're telling me. And only later to find out, not quite. As new stimuli comes in, as you do more clearing, as you have more awakening spiritually, mentally, you're thinking, I did think that I understood, but now I have more questions. Well, if you have questions, that's a good sign. You want to learn more. You're open to more in new information, but it also means you do not fully understand the material or the situation. And, by the way, there's still no such thing as a stupid question. When it comes into groups or lineages coming together for information, let's go ahead and go into, like, at the end of World War II, but it was also the beginning of the nuclear age. You know, with the nuclear field, like, okay, well, we knew this. If we do these things, we could have quite an explosion here, in the truest form, meaning an exchange of electrons, right? And look at the power. Well, good, we can end this war with this. Let's see what this happens. Yeah. But then over 500 detonations were done in the next 10 years. You know, millions of dollars were spent just on making bombs, bigger and better fireworks, more destructive. You know, learning about how we can totally toxify the environment with radioactivity. Did they want to share that information? No. But then once other people figured it out, more people were making nuclear weapons. What benefit did that do? Oh, look, we make bigger bombs now. Then the Cold War came shortly after that. You know, right on the brink of worldwide destruction. And you're thinking, well, shamanism's not like that. Okay, let me give you some examples, and perhaps you can think about some of these things and aspects of power. You know, I worked with a lot of people that were terminal. You know, from AIDS to cancer, right up until the 2020, as a matter of fact. And then even just recently, from November, I've talked about one where I worked with a young lady to help her father who was in a waking coma for a year and paralyzed, and within 6 weeks to be able to get him up until he's starting to sit up. Hey, think about the power that has to be acknowledged, generated, mustered, directed, and applied in a safe procedure. The understanding, people say, well, knowledge is power. That's true to some degree. But the understanding of that power comes with quite a learning curve. And again, if I give the same example as electricity, you know, and by the way, sorry if I keep repeating some of the metaphors that I give, but I know people don't categorically go through all the videos about something. They'll just skip and choose and whatever. And that's why I repeat myself, to make sure people get the complete picture. In electricity, if we're playing with a little Christmas toy that works off a couple 1-volt batteries, you don't know if you've touched the two ends together. You don't even feel the electricity. It's there. It's enough to maybe ignite methane, something like that. That's 0.04 millijoules. 9-volt battery, you can get a bit of a shock if you put it on your tongue. 12-volt battery, you can get a big, on a car, you get a pop. Might even blow the battery if you do some things wrong. House wiring in the United States is only 110 volts. In Europe, it's 220, and it'll hold you. And I've experienced that. That electricity is enough to hold you at that voltage. And it's the amps that kill you. So then you have watts, volts, and amps. There's different types of power in that electricity. Same thing when you're working with people for different types of energy healing work or other activities in the shamanic and metaphysical realm. Right after that is the 880 box on an apartment building. You know, the 14,000 volts coming down the street and 400,000 plus going across the country. There is zero tolerance levels for mistakes from the 440 on up. And finally you get into a voltage where it just pulls you into it. It will arc from you or from it to you and then find its way to the ground, cooking you in the process. Zero tolerance for mistakes in that learning curve. A person is working that can discover some of these things in power, metaphysically or shamanically, on their own, can, if they're cautious enough, can explore new territory safely. But somebody else that charges in and says, yeah, I understand it. I work on my kids' Christmas toys all the time. I understand electricity. Gone. And people are like, wow, what happened, you know? Remember, electricity is the same stuff that comes from the clouds and hits the ground, destroying trees, apartments, people, vehicles, and so on. You know, you have to look, you have to understand things, and often it's trial and error. Hopefully, you're learning from somebody else's errors. And you can do other controlled experiments. Same thing with this kind of work. People, and too many times, too, people will work into a realm of the manifestation magic or even in the darker magic and get great results. But, you know, when we're teaching that kind of stuff, we're tiptoeing through level 1, or what we call in the States 101. You know, 1, 2, 3, and for the European people, you know, because of the learning curves of the, not just the cause and effect, but the rebounds, the ricochets, the tags, unconscious tags, meaning that you can do something thinking you're adding to the enhancement of that type of work, but all you're doing is tagging yourself and just creating your own form of self-destruction. And people don't have the referential experience to realize that they're doing that. And that's why it's so important for students to say, hey, this is what I do. Here's how I decided to upgrade my magic. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Don't do that. And here's why. And or they'll do things and then not tell us. And I'm like, okay, the story you're telling me doesn't make any bit of sense. You're leaving out some important information somewhere. What is it? And then later on, they're like, oh, yeah, well, I forgot to tell you. Yeah. And let me tell you how that fucked you up. You know, so when it comes into, yeah, can we just... Everybody should be allowed to get all the information. Nuh-uh. Nope. You know, all kids, no matter what the age, should be able to go into the liquor store and buy and just get a couple bottles of whiskey, you know. Anybody else, just go in there and gun store, buy guns, you know, or prescription drugs. Fuck it. Why not? Right? Everybody should have access to it. There's reasons why. And the other part about being strict about following the form is if you don't complete all the exercises in the beginning to make your foundation, you're leaving out really important anchors and access keys to experiential learning for you to make your own decisions in new environments and new situations, making decisions that won't end up having you being a casualty of the art. That's a nice way of putting it. When it comes back into why don't people from the heads of different lineages or shamanic systems, metaphysical systems and so on, share the information? Because, particularly in my lineage of shamanism, where I come from, it's always been said you don't pass our apprenticeships, you survive them. because we have a tendency to take people really deep and into some, sketchy territory when we think they can really handle it, where they think they not just handle that, but handle the learning curve and the bumps and bruises that come with it. Hardly anybody else does that. So I, particularly, am not going to share the information that I have with advanced students and other shamans that I've trained with anyone of any other system, because I don't know their background. And you get some glorious titles from some of these other systems. When you look at their proficiency level, it's like not nearly as good as some of my lower apprentices. Why am I going to share that stuff with them? They're an accident waiting to happen. And then people, when they go into the higher levels, they're like, well, why can't I share what I'm doing with the group? Because you're far above that group. Even though you're at 101 where you're at, they are nowhere near you. And therefore, if you go ahead and do that, it's like you strike a match one time and go, look, kids, see, that's pretty cool, fire. And then you just give him a box of matches that he can strike anywhere? No, not on my watch. So you keep these things, and if somebody wants to do that I'm working with, and just give somebody down at the lower level that information, and then something happens, that person is no longer training with me. You are responsible for that person's mistake. But they said they understood. Yeah, just like you do. No. People regard this information for the safety of the practitioners and to prevent the collateral damage that can come from misuse, intentionally or otherwise. It's just that simple. And it's been this way for thousands and thousands of years for the exact same reason. Period. Don't question it. And this is not a conversation.